Good evening, everyone. This is Jeff from Astroscoop, Deep Dive Astrology Coaching. And today is October 10th, 2025. Happy Friday. Yes, happy Friday. See the #1 crown badge already. That's great. So today is the 10th of October, 2025. It is Friday. I'm doing my live stream today instead of Sunday because I have a very busy weekend coming up. So it is 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and I apologize. I know I wrote 8 p.m. In a couple places. I wrote 8 p.m. for tonight, so I'm not sure if anyone was waiting at 8 and saw that it didn't happen, but hopefully they will come back. But it is 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And looking to the west here, completely pitch black, very chilly here on the East Coast, and getting chillier. Really, really feels like fall, and it's really feeling like the full change of the season. Now we're almost in middle October. So last week, we'll wait a few minutes. Last week I talked about the late Libra period, Libra 3, which is very theatrical and social. And of course, we've been talking about Libra for many weeks now. And so Libra will be pretty much finished up tonight. Libra proper will be finished up tonight. And then we will talk about the Libra-Scorpio Cusp period, which doesn't start for another 8 days or so. And the cusp period runs from October 19th to the 25th or 26th. So if you know anyone born between the 19th and 25th or 26th, this live stream will apply to them or you. And we'll be talking about folks that are on the cusp of these two amazing signs and how they blend the very powerful energies of air and water together. And I know I talked about this last year and talked about a lot of different examples. So I hope tonight I do have a very interesting example for a Libra-Scorpio Cusp, an actor that's departed. So we'll talk about him later. We'll look at his chart, and to prepare for tuning into his chart, because I don't think I've ever looked up this particular actor's chart, and to prepare for tuning into his chart, because I don't think I've ever looked up this particular actor's chart ever. I started watching some clips on YouTube about an hour ago, some movie clips of his that I'm not sure I've ever seen before. So stay tuned for that. That will be interesting. And of course, it's also interesting to watch older movies from different decades, because there's a, back in the day, they didn't have all the same effects and everything. So that's always interesting to see that. So we'll take a look at that. Of course, we will look at the cosmic weather for tonight, specifically for Libra Scorpios, but also look at a general view for everyone. And probably, if we have time, we'll look at the new moon chart. We have the new moon chart coming up. The new moon is the 21st, so about 11 days. That's going to be the new moon in Libra. And then in November, we're going to have the full moon in Taurus, the sun in Scorpio opposing the full moon in Taurus, coming up November 5th. So this is I always love this time of year. I know I said this last year on my live stream. I just love this. I love this month. I like the Halloween, leading up to the Halloween vibe and energy. And it's rich. Like, there's something very rich about the earth and everything that's happening with the weather, and things are quieter, things are calmer. It's amazing how, especially here on the East Coast, because we experience the drastic change in the seasons, is a very marked change in every season. So we really feel it. So if, I assume if I was in Florida right now, I wouldn't feel it. If it was, 78 or 80 degrees at night, it might not feel the same kind of, change as far as fall goes. But energetically, you feel it because of the season and the signs changing. But it's just it's a great time of year. One of the best months. Karen says, greetings. Number 2, my sister on the 17th, my mother on the 21st. Oh, and my son on the 23rd. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I know you mentioned maybe one of them last year, but wow. Oh, this should be really good for you then. This should be juicy. That's good. All right, I'll do my best. So just going to wait a couple more minutes. Oh, we're already 5 minutes in. Okay, so we have a couple people. Again, hopefully, I might start progressing to doing the later live streams again and try to get more of the different time zone, engage some of the different time zone people. Because I know when I get comments from my videos, I try to figure out where people are from. It doesn't always tell me, but my YouTube Studio Stats does. So that'll tell me that I'm getting a lot of, when I mention those various countries throughout the year, like right now it's the US, I'm getting mostly United States viewers, but very, very little foreign viewers, non-US, which is really interesting. Because I think 6 months or a year ago, it was very strongly foreign countries and not the US that was keeping the views going. So it's very interesting. But anyways, tonight we're going to talk about Libra-Scorpio Cusp. Tonight is the 10th, so we're still in the Libra 3 period. And I mentioned last week briefly how late Libra people are born up until tomorrow, up until the 11th. I'm sorry, up until the 18th. Getting confused there. Up until the 18th. The Libra, you always have to factor in the co-ruler with Libra, with Venus. And with the late Libra person, it was Mercury. So we talked about theater and theatrics and sort of things like that. And Libras love words and repartee. But when we talk about cusp period, like we're going to talk about Libra-Scorpio Cusp, the cusp periods are always the best and the most interesting to me. And when I meet cusp people, I know a lot of cusp people in my family and friend circle, but when I meet cusp people that I don't know personally, but I find out that they're a cusp person, I always get a feeling, like I get an intuitive sense when I meet them as an astrologer. I get an intuitive sense of whether I see what I do. I feel the Libra more coming off of you, or do I feel the Scorpio energy coming off of you, sort of thing. And it's interesting when people say that they feel more like one sign. I recently had a man comment on one of my, I think it was my old Libra-Scorpio Cusp video, probably from years ago. And he mentioned that he was born on October 19th and that he was very happy with my video because out of all the videos he had watched, my video was the only one that helped him reconcile and shine a light on the fact of why he didn't feel like a true Libra. So as a October 19th Libra, he said in his comments, I know I'm a Libra, but I feel darker than that. I feel more intense than that, which is he probably didn't know he was on a cusp and that he was very literally 3-4 days away from being a Scorpio. So all those late Libra people, someone on the 17th, they would be very late Libra, not quite cusp, but close, very close. And depending on the year, I'd have to look at the degree as well. But it would still be very important to look at the person's Venus. And then for Libra Scorpio, we have Venus and Pluto. So now we have the rulers of Venus and Pluto. And adding the Pluto aspect, the Pluto factor, which is the Scorpio planet, and or to a lesser extent Mars, a little bit of Mars, which we'll talk about when we get to Scorpio. And that feels so weird because saying that, because I just got a deja vu of me saying Mars and Pluto from last year. So I'm thinking, how can that be a year ago? But I think it is. Wow. Okay. But it's interesting because the universe is bringing me. It's I feel like a tugboat sometimes, a sailboat. I'm getting pushed in different directions on the sea of what to talk about, and I think more and more um, there's more and more spirit energy, spiritual energy, whatever you want to call it, psychic energy from both the living and the departed right now. It's very strong. It's very thin, and we have to protect ourselves. And we have to make sure that what we're giving off and what we're receiving is positive, and it's positive light, and not negative or toxic energies. So, but it's definitely very within the last week or two. It's just such a different vibe, and it's very heightened. And I see a lot of mediums and psychics on YouTube and tarot people that are really, really. There's so many Libra-Scorpio Cusp readings, like tarot readings. I looked it up a few hours ago, and it was dizzying. It was just like it was like hundreds that I was scrolling through. So the energy is very, very powerful. So we're talking about Venus and Pluto, and that's water and air, or air and water. And what's interesting about people born between the 19th and 25th or 26th, and I know many of them, and I've known many. I've worked with some, uh, acquainted with some, have some in my family. There is, depending on the person's generation, this is really important, because if someone's born October 20th, let's say they're born the 20th or 21st, so they're well into the cusp, they're going to be Libra. They will still be very, very late Libra. And in their chart, whatever generation, you're going to look at Venus. But I would still look at Pluto for an influence anyways, because it's so darn close to the 23rd. So if you had someone born on the 23rd, almost every year, almost any year on the 23rd, the person's going to be a 0-degree Scorpio, or maybe a 29-9 Libra, but basically 0 Scorpio. So the October 23rd person is a Scorpio, and with Libra traits, because they're so close to Libra. Now, if someone was born late on the 22nd, let's say right before midnight, it would depend on the year. So we would have to look that up specifically. And maybe I'll do that in a little bit to demonstrate. But that's really, really close, because an October 23rd person, I've had people tell me that are born that day, well, I always thought I was a Libra. But when you look up most years, you're going to see that they're actually Scorpio. So that's interesting in someone's mind, to think they're Libra their whole life, and then to find out, no, I have Libra traits because I'm on the cusp, but I'm actually a very, very early cusp Scorpio. So that's really interesting. But people born this week they carry on the theatrical quality of people that are born up until the 18th this week coming. And there's something a little more, not necessarily darker, but there's something a little more concentrated or focused about them. So it's like you have the sharpness and airy qualities of Libra, primarily mental, and that combines now with that Scorpio Pluto influence for more focus and a more powerful mentality, more powerful ability to discern and look a little deeper into things, and also to be sort of critical. But because it's not just the air sign evaluating a certain amount of information, it's now the Scorpio influence coming in that sees through things, tries to see to the truth of a situation, or see through the core of a situation, and combining that with the intellectual qualities of Libra. So it's like it's like an intense person that's a little more pleasing than a Scorpio that we'll talk about next week, that's born, let's say a Scorpio that's born on Halloween, is a pure Scorpio. That person may not be as pleasant, naturally pleasant, as someone that's born on the 23rd, that's going to have the Venus and the Pluto influence with the water and the air. But you do have to really, really look at that specific chart. You really need to look at the Venus. And then if in that chart, if there's Venus-Pluto aspects, which is extremely powerful and potent, that would change the whole landscape of the person. Even if the Venus-Pluto, like if Venus-Pluto, I knew a woman once, her Venus was in Libra, conjunct Pluto in Libra. So even though it was in a light air sign, she was very intense in certain ways in romantic relationships because her Venus and Pluto were conjunct. So even if it's not in Scorpio or in a water sign, it takes on a scorpionic or Scorpio-like quality for Venus, for that person, for love relationships, and also socially. So it's really, really important to see if there's any Venus-Pluto aspects. And what's interesting is the more famous people I look up, when I watch a lot of podcasts, I love to see musicians interviewed. So right now, one podcast I'm watching a lot of is Billy Corgan. He's the lead singer of the Smashing Pumpkins, and he has the Billy Corgan podcast. And he is in his late 50s, but he interviews all sorts of different types of people that are different ages. So he doesn't just stick with just people his age. He's had some people that are older. He's had some musicians that are younger. Talks about pop music, rock music, all sorts of different things from these people. But when I'm watching it, I tend to look up the person's chart simultaneously while I'm watching it so I can tune in. And I see a lot of these strong aspects to Pluto for musicians and entertainers and people that are able to create something within themselves, in their mind or their body, and they're able to express it in a very intense way and a confident way. And a lot of times Pluto is involved there. So the Pluto aspects are so powerful that you need an outlet, because it's like a valve. It could the pressure, like a pressure cooker. So you need that strong outlet, especially very much for Mars aspects, but especially for Pluto as well. The deeper energy and deeper creativity within all of our charts. So Libra Scorpio people combining the air and the water. So it's interesting that Libra likes balance. I've been talking about that for weeks. Libra likes balance. Libra likes things to be just so. And Scorpio is very convicted about beliefs, opinions, and what they desire and create. So very, very difficult for a Scorpio planet to be flexible. It's not innately flexible at all. It's fixed water, which is ice. It's the scorpion. But it can also be the eagle too. So the higher part of it's the eagle. We'll talk more about that with Scorpio. But it's fixed water or ice. So the Scorpio influence is naturally sort of inflexible. It doesn't mean they can't be flexible, but the natural inclination for the Scorpio planet is to kind of adhere or protect whatever it is, a belief system, a mode of operating, a modus operandi sort of thing. So that's why people that are on a Scorpio cusp or have strong Scorpio planets, they're not people that are going to on a dime going to be able to just adjust and pivot in life, and they can adapt well to changes in a certain. They are resourceful. So anywhere there's Scorpio on the chart, there's resourcefulness. So in that way, they can adapt well, but they're not necessarily socially or personally flexible. So it's always a struggle with a Scorpio cusp person or a person with major planets in Scorpio. And when we look at the transits, we'll look at some of that Scorpio energy that I've been talking about for a couple of weeks. But Venus, Pluto, those rulers, I put on my thumbnail. What did I put? dramatic charisma. I think I put dramatic charisma. So folks born this week have a natural charisma about them, and they are dramatic. And they're dramatic more in a, not in a Leo kind of way. It's not showy. To me, it's not showy. They're dramatic in the sense of what they think and what they're into. These are people that are going to read a novel, read like a whole Stephen King set, read a whole Harry Potter set, and get really, really into the dramatic, the literacy of it, the words, the storyline, and then, I put on here somewhere, and the critical nature of it. They have very strong critical natures. Again, this is different from Virgo. This is more it's almost like the Libra and Scorpio is born for theater in a kind of quiet way. So like Leo is born for theater in a natural way to perform and get an audience and get applause. But Libra Scorpio people have this charisma that's often, and they're often introverts. That's what's interesting. I see them as more introverted, but yet they have this charisma that people are drawn to them. So that they can sometimes not like that because they'll draw people to them. And that's both the Libra and the Scorpio. It's very magnetic. And then but they don't want too much attention on them. They like their space. They like their alone time, especially to think. And they don't want to they're deliberate. They don't like to be rushed. They're not foolhardy. They don't make impulsive decisions for the most part. They make very penetrating, kind of deliberate decisions. And the sometimes indecisive nature of Libra now starts to combine with Scorpio, which is at times almost too decisive. Like Scorpio can be too convicted. Like this is the way things are. Sort of an absolute. So a Libra Scorpio person, there's a little bit of a struggle there because they both are comfortable with certain absolutes of what they feel really strongly about something or think very strongly about something, but they also want to have a little bit of that balance to say, hey, I still need to process these differing points of view and not really come up with a conclusion or make a decision yet because I'm not ready. So, but that charisma creates drama in their lives. It can create drama in their love lives. But again, it's more like under the surface, low key, where they may attract a lot of partners and possibly mislead a lot of partners with their charisma, and yet they don't necessarily feel that strongly about someone. A Libra Scorpio person, they can be very attached, but they can also be somewhat detached and aloof as well. So there is a little bit of an aloofness there. Does not mean they don't care. It doesn't mean they're not loving either. I mean, obviously you have to know the person well, but it's behind a facade. They like that calm. They like to present this kind of calm, peaceful facade that's not ruffled, but there's a lot going on underneath. And it's more of a struggle. It's more of a struggle for them to balance the mental and the emotional energies than if someone were just a Libra born like today, or if they're just a Scorpio, let's say born on November 1st. They're, purely that one sign. And then you look at the other influences in their chart. But of course, these people, they have the Libra and the Scorpio. So they're like, boy, I really feel strongly about this, but yet I want to be fair. I don't want to make a decision impulsively. But Scorpio's like, well, what do we love and what do we hate? Like we either love this or hate this situation, or this situation is either great for me or it's not. I want to make a move, or oh heck no, I'm not making a move, kind of thing. So there is a seesaw there with Libra Scorpio people. Now Bela Lugosi is one person I found this week. I don't know if I've ever mentioned him in any of my Libra Scorpio videos or anything, but he was born on the 21st, and he has a very interesting chart, which we will look at in a moment. And of course, he was known for his signature Dracula, which he did on stage in 1927, which was Broadway, and then the film came out in 1931. So I went way back. So he's one of the oldest Libra-Scorpio celebrities that I could come up with that really, really nails this cusp. He's so dead on for this kind of cusp, and very, very interesting. So we'll talk about him in a second. And the charisma and drama, another person in music is Tom Petty. So we lost Tom Petty a few years ago. He used to be with a group called Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and he was folk rock. He's like the more popular, more rock version of Bob Dylan. He's very much like almost sounds like Bob Dylan. So he's less folky and more mainstream pop and rock, but amazing talent that Tom Petty had. And I remember when I was in college, there was a woman, I was dating a woman, and her best friend, I asked her, what kind of music do you like? I'm a big music person. And she goes, oh, Tom Petty. And I said, really? She said, oh my God, yes. She goes, he's the sexiest man on earth. And of course, no disrespect to Tom when he was alive, but Tom was a very average, I think, kind of average looking man, a little bit odd with the hair, a little bit interesting, kind of almost odd look to him, not necessarily classically handsome or anything, but his charisma and his talent and his voice, and he could, play guitar and write music and amazing. I think his music is aged really, really well, where some of Bob Dylan's music I don't think has aged that well. And I personally think Bob Dylan is a little overhyped. But Tom Petty, he's not my favorite, but he is an amazing talent that combines that Libra and Scorpio. There's a lot of thought and a lot of feeling in his music. So next is the head versus heart. Head-heart. And I know I'm pretty sure I mentioned that this year and probably even 2 years ago. People born on this cusp are always struggling. They're always struggling to balance their head and their heart. So whatever day you catch them on, and whatever situation they're in, context of their life, whether it's a friendship, a hobby, their love life, or their job, they will put they'll put a lot of heart into what they do. And that also includes their relationships. They can be very loyal. They can be very strong about people that they're devoted to. And they also are mentally need strong mental connections with people because of the Libra part. But they are often at odds with their head and their heart. Sometimes they're approaching their relationship with too much of the head, too much of the mind, and not enough of the heart. And since sometimes they're using their heart, they're more stuck in their feelings, or maybe they're stuck to make a move because they're overwhelmed with these powerful thoughts that they have, and also their strong feelings that they kind of suppress sometimes. It's not easy for them always to express the combination of the head and the heart. So there's definitely a struggle there. And one thing that would help for them is mindfulness, any kind of mindfulness, any kind of, Tai Chi, meditation, listening to airy or ambient music, listening to music with certain frequencies. They have such a strong mentality, a piercing. Okay, I'm getting it. I'm seeing Bela Lugosi's eyes in the clips, and I'm obviously he was very piercing, but I'm getting they all have it. So think about the people that you know that are on this cusp. Think of their eyes when you've looked at them, no matter what they look like. Even if they look like the boy or girl next door, or if they're blonde, doesn't matter. There's a piercing quality that is reminiscent of that Scorpio part. But it's also the Venus. It's also the beauty and the love that they have from the Venus. So think about that. The love and the beauty from Venus, and then that magnetism from Scorpio, woo, combined. Yeah, that's the charisma and the magnetism. But again, the majority of them are introverts. I would say almost all this kind of planetary energy, the fall energy, the cusp energy, the way the Earth is right now, moving towards the winter, moving towards Scorpio, Sag, and Capricorn for the winter, definitely more introverted. If you think of the Pisces Aries cusp, which is in conjunct this cusp, so that's like a wild card in conjunct, that's spring, right? So even though Pisces can be shy, the spring energy is so different than where we are now, right? That energy is so different. It springs forth. And the fall, even though Libra is a cardinal sign, it doesn't jump. It doesn't leap or jump forth like Aries does. That's why Aries and Libra are opposite. So it's another thing to think of. So their head and their heart, they got to get into mindfulness. They have to slow themselves down, watch those workaholic tendencies, because when they put their mind and their feelings into something, it's very hard to get them away from it. They can be consumed with it. So the mindfulness, they're seeking balance, right? But their personal life is not balanced. They could either be too much in their job or even too much in their relationships, or too much attached to the relationships. Like I mentioned, many charts with Libra have a hard time being alone, and the Scorpio has a need for, water sign connection. All right, so let's look at, before we go on, let's look at the transits. Okay. All right, here's the transits for tonight, October 10th. I did it for 9 o'clock. Look at that, and it's 9:02. That was good timing. Didn't even look at the clock. So this is New York Eastern time. This is the current weather. If a baby's born right now, this is his or her chart. So if you know anybody that's giving birth tonight or this weekend, as always, every chart has beauty to it and complexity to it. Now, this one, what stands out to me tonight, right now, is look at all this Gemini. So you have this person's going to have Gemini rising. Just talking to someone about the Gemini rising. Boy, synchronicity. And my son, who's a character and is a chatterbox. Oh my gosh, can he talk? He's Gemini rising. But Gemini rising here, moon's in Gemini, and of course Uranus retrograde, sitting there forever, going back to 0, which is almost Taurus, 0:58 minutes. All this is in the 12th house and Gemini rising. So I mean, right now, this is really strongly Geminian. And of course, that's very different, marked difference from this Libra energy that I was talking about. So we talked about last week. Now we're in smack dab in the middle of Libra. We're at 17. And then now there's your Mercury in Scorpio. I told you Mercury is going from Libra to Scorpio. There's the Mars in Scorpio now at 12. And so before, I mean, of course, this moon, every 2.5 days, the moon changes. But for now, this is very strong Gemini influence. And this is all ruled by Mercury. This chart is ruled by Mercury in Scorpio, which just is early. But what's interesting is this, here's the outer Aries. Of course, Saturn went back into Pisces, went way back to 27. And the node is stuck at 16 in Pisces retrograde. Stuck there forever. This Pisces energy is unbelievable. This Pisces wants to hang on for years and years. And but all this Gemini is in conjunct all this Scorpio. So the in conjuncts, as I talk about, are two signs that are vastly different and don't share anything in common. So they're not opposed, they're not square, they're not trine, they are in conjunct. So they're just totally different wild cards. And the Gemini is here. I do have it on the poster here. There is a, oh, excuse me. There is a strong trine, a huge trine here. I mean, this right here, the moon is conjunct the ascendant. Now, these Gemini degrees are too late. This is 0. But we have Pluto here, trining Uranus. I was talking about that a little bit last week. And then this Venus is almost Libra, very close. This will be 27, then it's going to be 4 degrees till it goes to 1 of Libra. So there's a lot of air sign energy of trine. I know I was talking about that this would come, and it's really nice for all the air signs, but specifically nice for Gemini planets and Libra planets getting the trine or conjunction from the Libra or the Gemini. If you have Gemini, you're getting the trine from the Libra. If you have Libra, you're getting the trine from the Gemini. So this Pluto in Aquarius is obviously the lone Aquarius planet that will be there forever. And it is trining, continuing. How long ago I was talking about, right? It was conjuncting the early Aquarius people. It's still doing that, and it's gone backwards. So what's interesting is these trine planets, I mean, 2 of them are retrograde. So the trine isn't as strong when it's retrograde because it's weakened a little bit. It's really, really slow, slow and behind the scenes, but it's a pause. But it's kind of nice for the air signs. But the pronounced thing here, and I know I was talking about this 3 or 4 months ago, maybe even longer, is like there's no fire. Look at here's Leo on the 4th. There's no fire. Here's Sag, nothing major. And of course, Aries is on the cusp of the 12th right now for this event chart. And all the Aries planets are in the 11th because this is almost Taurus is hidden here and Scorpio hidden here. So a baby born tonight with this chart, Eastern time, would have almost 0 fire. And I always talk about in charts, whenever there's an element lacking, it's very, the native has to compensate or overcompensate in other ways. They have to find other ways or find a unique way of expressing that element. And it's not good or bad when you're lacking something. If you're lacking fire, it's not good or bad. Any astrologer could label it, oh, I think it's good, or I think it's bad, or I think it's neutral. But all it is just a lack of spark, so that the person has to work harder or find different avenues within themselves or within situations to take initiative and find spark and joy in life and in situations. It's not going to come as naturally or as easy. Expressing enthusiasm is not going to be easy or natural or necessarily spontaneous when there's no fire here. So that's kind of where we are with the cosmic chart, with the cosmic energy of all of us. It doesn't feel, when I'm just quiet and meditating, it doesn't feel fiery to me. And of course, this is what's showing here. What's also really low is there's no Earth. Here's the Capricorn. Taurus is hidden in the 12th, and then we have this one late Venus in Virgo, which was going to be Libra extremely soon. So really no Earth and no fire. The chart feels a little like this energy gives me a little bit of a lightweight sense, I guess, which is good because we're coming into some of the Scorpio energy. So there's a lot of lightness here, but this is drastically different, this Libra and this Gemini. Of course, like I talked about with all this Scorpio energy, and this Mercury and Mars are just about conjunct as well. So that's very, very intense. So anybody with Scorpio planets between, let's say, 5 and 10, they're getting their conjunction here. And I talked about, a couple weeks ago, I talked about the Mars Scorpio person that has Mars and Scorpio on their chart. They have a Mars return, which is their energy getting revamped, a reset for their energy. But now someone that has Mars at 11, 12, 13, 14, now they're getting their Mars return for a few days. And then it just moves on, and they'll get it again next year. It just moves pretty quick. But there's a lot here, and the trines are, the trines make things easy. Oh, and I forgot to mention this. We have this Aquarius here at the top, the public part of the chart too, which is now. So this Gemini rising, a lot of Gemini rising people, most Gemini rising charts that I've looked up almost always have Aquarius midheaven or Aquarius on the 10th. So that really creates a character. You got this very talkative, fun person here, and then you got their approach to work and the public is zany and erratic and very much, I'd like to do my own thing, please. So, I have two family members that have this combo here, that have Gemini rising with Aquarius on the 10th, and absolutely not boring. Never. This is a person that's never gonna be boring. And these aren't planets. Keep in mind, these are house cusps. This is your ascendant to the world, and then this is your 10th house, how you approach work, career, and the 10th house of public. So it's not; those aren't even planets. I'm not talking about actual planets in Gemini or Aquarius, sort of thing. So that's where we are with that. So let's see. Couple others. Mark King, I think I mentioned him last. He's a bass player from a group called Level 42. He's a slap. He does a slap bass technique, like with his thumb, and he's one of the best bassists in the world with this technique, and he's one of the best British musicians in a lot of polls as well. William Zabka, I know I mentioned him last year, and maybe even the year before, from Cobra Kai and also some 80s movies. These guys he really has a really interesting blend of he's funny and pleasant, but he's also definitely intense. And I mentioned the Pisces Aries cusp, which is spring, and how different that is from where we are now. And if you combine the fall cusp and the spring cusp of personalities, it's very colorful, but it's excess when you combine these energies, the air water with the water and fire. And of course, with these two cusps, there's no earth. So there can be a lack of grounding there, sort of thing. Greg Hawkes is another celebrity. He is the former keyboardist of the Cars, rock group The Cars from Boston, Massachusetts. And they're actually reforming. They're getting back together. The surviving members are getting back together to form a new version of the Cars. Two of the members have passed, Ben Orr and Rick Ocasek from the Boston area. They have passed, but they're coming back, so that's kind of interesting. And all of they're born this late Libra here on this cusp, this late Libra. Let's see, 17th, 21st. So the 21st, your mother on the 21st, this would apply. So the 20th or 21st, 22nd person would be born under the fixed star Izar or Izar, which is interesting, which is a very late Libra star. And it's 28 Libra. That's also James Van Praagh. You probably know him, the psychic medium that used to be very popular 15, 20 years ago, and he would do readings, spirit medium readings for the audience. And I've seen people do what he does in person. It is very fascinating and interesting. Even if you don't believe in it, there's a very strong component to it that is, again, even if your mind is skeptical, the energy that some people that are legitimate that can receive the messages is pretty amazing. I know there are frauds out there. There are definitely people that are fraudulent that have earpieces and they listen to someone and get tips, or they do what's called cold readings. They do cold readings with information that's fed to them. I don't believe that's something that James did, because he's pretty interesting. And then Jupiter conjunct this star. Michael Jackson had it, his Jupiter in Libra. And it also has a Mars energy to it. So it's a very bright and kind of strong star for a late Libra planet to have. And then the same constellation, there's a star called Princeps at around 3 degrees of Scorpio. And this is something that Robin Williams had, who I've mentioned many times, the late comic actor Robin Williams. He had it as his ascendant, which is very intense. And this potentially causes a lot of trouble through excess or an imbalance with people in relationships. Relationships being too one-sided in some way, as far as what someone who has power or leverage, or what someone's giving or receiving in that. So Princeps and Izar. So very interesting stars, but also very magnetic stars. And you can kind of see that, like in Robin Williams, in his roles, he has the Scorpio rising. What's interesting about that is I didn't realize that it was a Libra-Scorpio Cusp ascendant, because when he smiles, I almost see a little hint of Venus there. And that would be why, because it's not a full-on, it's not a more mature version of Scorpio. And then I talked about the trine, sun, midheaven, ascendant, and moon on here on the chart we looked at, and then no fire signs. And then there's a T-square with Jupiter, Chiron, or Chiron, and Pluto. So very, very interesting. All right, so let's look at another chart. Let's see where we're at here. All right, so let's look at the new moon in Libra that's coming up. The aspects, okay. All right, so here's our new moon in Libra coming up on October 21st. Carolyn says, great pictures. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, yes. I didn't mention that. Oh, over here. Yeah, my daughter finally getting back into doing the pictures for me. So she did Libra, the scales, and she did Scorpio. She said this is terrible. These are not, it's not easy to draw this stuff unless you're like a trained artist, right? I mean, she's not a trained artist, but she does really well, and she did really well last year. So yeah, thank you very much, sweetheart, for doing that. I know she was going to pop in and watch this a little bit. So this is the new moon coming up in about 10 days. And woo, this is looking like a nice doozy here. So we remember I talked about the new moon in Virgo that we had, which was late Virgo. Well, we have an almost identical degree this time, but this time it's in Libra. So I just mentioned synchronicity, the 28-degree Libra, and that kind of energy. So when we have this on the 21st, and Venus at that point, as you can see, Venus will be 9, Mars will be farther along at 20, Mercury will be exact conjunct Mars here with the Scorpio energy, and then we'll have this asteroid also in Scorpio. And then on this new moon, in the morning in New York time, Scorpio rising conjunct this asteroid, and then all this Scorpio energy in the first, and then all this Libra in the 12th house. So this is much more of a wow chart for a baby to be born on Earth than tonight that we just looked at. I mean, oh my gosh. And so when we have this Sun Moon conjunction in Libra, this is literally a day and a half away from Scorpio, because we're going to start Scorpio, like I mentioned, on the 23rd. So it's interesting. I get so many comments. I keep saying this. I get so many comments. I'm amazed at my older videos, how people are still watching the Cusp videos and still giving me the same questions that I got from people like 2 years ago. And I think it has to do with the branch of astrology that people follow. You know, I'm following tropical astrology. You can see here it says geocentric tropical. Some people agree with it. Some people don't believe it's truly accurate. It's Placidus. It's Western astrology. That's what I follow. It's always resonated with me, and it continues to. But so many people say, you know, I know I kind of felt like I kind of knew I was born on a cusp, but I really didn't know what sign I was. Or I finally I did my chart online, And I was still confused. Did I have the right time? Did I have the right time zone? You know, the right birthplace and everything, the latitude and longitude. Did everything line up? So a lot of people, even people that have been into astrology for years, still are confused. And my take on that, my suggestion would be to just get spiritual about it, whatever that means to you. Spirituals, there's no one spiritual practice. You know, there's all sorts of people on YouTube and stuff teaching people about spirituality and how to tune in to the frequencies of the earth, frequencies of nature, animals, etc. So there's no one definition of what's spiritual. It's what's spiritual for you. What it is for me is not going to necessarily be for everyone that here that's in the chat. Could be similar, but it's going to be different. So I would say to someone says, hey, I'm born October 22nd. Am I really a Libra, or I really feel like a Scorpio? Well, just get quiet. Just get quiet and ask your guides, ask your higher self, and just get quiet and ask. And you'll get, you know yourself. If you're inside yourself, no one else is in, we're not in there with you. So you know intuitively. You may block it or you may not believe it, but you know intuitively as a cusp person, that person's going to know, okay, yeah, I do. I really am a Libra, but I feel the Scorpio tendencies. Or I am a Scorpio, but I feel the Libra tendencies to be more of a diplomat or a people pleaser, sort of thing. So that's what I always tell people. And I always tell people you have to look up, you have to have an astrologer do your chart with the correct time zone. You know, people that don't have the exact time, we usually use just 12 p.m., you know, because 12 hours from when the day started, 12 a.m., 12 p.m., and then back to 12 a.m., you know, the next day. So we just use that. But there's a lot of change in the house cusps and the ascendants throughout the day. There's a huge amount of difference. And if I were to animate this chart and you would see it tick, 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 it's going to, you know, it moves fast. These are going to the aspects are going to change. The ascendant's going to change. The Leo up here, Leo on the midheaven is going to change. So the chart would become drastically different. Even in an hour or two after this, if a baby's born on this new moon at this time, he or she's going to have Scorpio rising, but then a couple hours later, they're basically have this chart, but then they're going to be Sag rising. So that'll give them a whole different spark. But this new moon in Libra is going to be the new start for the fall, the reset. And of course, that's right before we go into Scorpio. And so we're getting a little preview of all this Scorpio energy here. And I feel like I have to do, I feel like I'm going to have to fit in an extra live stream within the next month, maybe, to talk extra about, because I know next week we'll be talking all about Scorpio, but I'm going to need to fit in some different things because I'm getting a lot of questions from people about their placements, specific placements. Like we had that guest a couple weeks ago, and she knew every single placement in her chart. She knew the degrees. She knew where it was in her chart and what that meant, what it signified. So it's great. It's amazing. So I feel like I need to do a Mars video, what the Mars placement means in natal astrology, and talk about all the Mars signs, you know, in a general sense, and then maybe go into one or two at a time, more in depth, as I've been talking about this Mars and Scorpio since we entered it when it was early. And I meditated more on this Scorpio energy since I was getting the vibes about it early on. And yeah, it's like, okay, this is weird. It's going to sound really strange, but I'm getting like someone or something's telling me we're stuck. We're stuck. When I'm asking, what does Mars and Scorpio mean? Something's just saying we're stuck. So I'm not I'm not sure what that means, but I did mention a couple weeks ago that I said that a big potential struggle with a Mars and Scorpio energy is the repression, being blocked, stuck. I guess that's similar. And the Mars and Scorpio person, you'll find the Mars and Scorpio. It's very popular. It's very evident in music and the intense creative arts, which makes complete sense. A Mars and Scorpio energy is kind of relentless in its pursuit of creativity. So when it is consumed with something, its mind, the feelings, and the interest I mentioned is laser focus. It goes all the way, for the most part. It goes all the way with something. Mars and Scorpio doesn't go halfway with anything. So that can really, someone can really achieve great heights because of that Mars and Scorpio, that relentlessness. Now, the very nature, think about that, the very nature of any of us being so single-minded about anything in life, something else has to suffer, right? It has to, because that's just the law of nature, the law of balance. So we can't be balanced all the time. We can't be grounded all the time. But what we need to put our laser focus in ultimately is our what is most valuable to us. Is that our marriage and our children? But it's also taking care of ourself, right? Taking care of your health, self-care. That should be paramount. And then you have other things like taking care, of your responsibilities at a job or career, maybe taking care of your domestic animals, maybe taking care of nature or wild animals, wildlife. There's all sorts of different levels of where you put that intensity of that single-mindedness, of that feeling and that interest. There's no other sign that Scorpio has that feeling and interest that's so powerful. So I would think just by the very nature of being so relentless and focused, something has to suffer. And I would imagine if you asked any famous person that has Mars and Scorpio that achieved a very high level of music success, acting success, artistic success, or even someone that would be very high up in the military. I could see high-ranking officers in the military or any of the three-letter agencies. There's probably a lot of Scorpio Mars agents, persons that it's very stealth and quiet and secretive. So that would fit. So I'm sure there's a lot of law enforcement there. But it'd be interesting to interview them and ask them, what, if anything, are you aware of that have your relationship suffered with your relentlessness to pursue something? And that's really what we're seeing there. That's really what that new moon energy is all about, because it's so close to Scorpio. Scorpio is rising, Mars and Scorpio in the first house. This new moon chart is relentless. Oh my goodness. I'm amazed, and I'm thinking about think about the souls that know they're going to be born. They're coming in, right? The babies that are coming in, and the moms that have a due date that morning, or a planned section that morning. Just wow. I mean, imagine you're a baby and you're picking this chart. But there's a lot of potential for this, for a lot of healing there. I mean, Virgo is healing, but there's no Virgo here. It's on the 11th. Venus is in the 11th of groups, but all this hidden 12th house energy, water house, and then all the Scorpio. There's nothing in the 8th, and then the nodes in the 4th. If something was in the 8th along with all this, my gosh, that would point to even more sort of hidden healing resources. But this is an enormous amount of resources at our disposal to elevate and transform who we are and where we are, our situations. So if we want to relentlessly pursue something like the truth, and we want to transform kind of the messy world we're living in right now, or we want to transform ourselves into a much higher soaring kind of being, like the eagle, right? The higher version of the Scorpio is the eagle soaring, and not the low-level scorpion where we might hide around a corner and sting someone out of jealousy or insecurity, you know, uh, or maybe like in a cowardly way, we kind of sting somebody, you know, when they're not looking. That's not that's not very nice, right? So that's the Scorpio energy, and that's what I'm getting. But I'm getting we're stuck. So I don't know. I don't know if that means the collective we, like all of us, all 4 billion people, we're stuck. Other galaxies that are stuck. You know, there are a lot of people that believe there are other beings and other life races, and there's a lot of people that believe that they're walking amongst us, like hybrids. You know, it's a lot of food for thought. Hybrid people, you know, they're part reptilian, and there are thousands of people on social media. I mean, it's probably in the tens of thousands now that apparently have documented proof and pictures and videos and, you know, of all this stuff. And it's becoming very kind of, I don't want to say mainstream, but it's becoming more, you know, accepted, these kind of wild theories, or possibly wild evidence, you know, just like the Bigfoot thing or Sasquatch or Yeti. So, but all this stuff is all coming out. You know, I talked about this a year ago. All this stuff is ruled by Pluto and Aquarius. So this is all in divine order. It's like the nature is saying, okay, for this new moon, this is gonna how we're going to reset with the Pluto and Aquarius, which is all about this intense zeal for the truth. And this government shutdown thing, I mean, it's all kind of the divine plan of, I think, everyone kind of, all of us, you know, moving on with life, but not just moving on physically, mundane, enduring our daily life and aging. I don't mean just that, but I mean spiritually and psychologically, and mentally, and all that. Chances for people to just, you know, again, like I mentioned last week, be on a higher vibration, as more days than not, trying to be a better person. But more than that, more than just being a better person with your energy or your values, how you treat people or you treat yourself, but just literally a higher vibration where you start to kind of sense things, your intuition increases, and you kind of have a more powerful knowing of what's true and what's fake, without kind of how someone says something to you. It's not so much how they're saying it or whether it seems fake from them, but you almost know intuitively that seems true. This doesn't seem true. This doesn't feel right. This doesn't sit right. You know, that sort of thing. And so yeah, so this is new moon is yeah. I'm getting a lot of energy to just keep talking about this. I feel like I could go to midnight with this. But we might have to come back to this. Well, next week will be before the new moon, so let's out of that. Take a break for now. Thank you. And let's see. All right. So for our finale here, let's look up Mr. Bela Lugosi, who I know my father liked. My dad was a big horror movie and horror TV fan. And I don't think my dad really understood all the astrology of the actors and stuff, although he was, in a kind of a superficial way, my dad was into astrology, and he did know some of the signs of the actors. And especially, he was a Taurus, and he would say to me once in a while, he would say, "Oh, look at that actor. He's a Taurus," and he would say something about his physique or his neck or something. So interesting. But anyways, Bela Lugosi, born October 20th. So again, right in this period, 1882. My gosh, that feels old, right? 1882 in Hungary at 3:30 p.m. And the accuracy of this seems pretty high. Just like the last chart I looked at, this accuracy looks high. It looks like an A or a B for accuracy. So right off the bat with Bela Lugosi. So I'm watching, not Dracula. So I was watching the movie called The Devil Bat from 1940. Now, of course, I'm kind of young to even, I think, kind of my generation to even kind of be interested in that. But I have watched old movies before with both my parents and also by myself. But I'm definitely going to start to go down more of a rabbit hole with these movies from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. Just old classic movie making. There's something very precious about it and very, sort of pure. But I'm watching The Devil Bat tonight, where Bela Lugosi played a doctor, and I watched the first maybe 15 minutes of the movie because it's free. You can look it up on YouTube and watch it for free. And I was going to watch clips of Dracula, but I went to The Devil Bat instead. And what's interesting is he's older in that. He looks similar yet different than Dracula. Obviously, was very specific with the makeup and the eyes and everything, the intense stare. But watching him act, and I saw in the bio that he was a Shakespearean actor, so he had really, really good kind of pure kind of method acting theater style and theater training, which is really interesting. But this chart is an absolute, it is like his son said in a biography, his son said in an article once, my dad was Dracula. Like there was no one else that had this kind of mystery and secrecy about him than my dad. And yet he also says how he was a normal dad that taught his son how to like canoe on their summer house they would spend at the lake in the summers when he wasn't acting. And he taught his son how to canoe. But, so he, I guess, was a normal dad somewhat. But what strikes me about this chart is I don't know if I've ever seen a chart like this. Now, all charts amaze me because I tune into certain things. But the Pisces rising, I have hardly talked about this probably even since I've done this channel. This is one of the placements I've talked very little about. Pisces rising people literally they look like a Pisces and kind of act like a Pisces more than any other ascendant. They are like a dead ringer for being a Pisces. And yet here you can see that Bela had his sun at 27 degrees of Libra conjunct these stars, or this Libra star, I'm sorry, conjunct the Izar star. So he was very close. He was 2.5 days away from being a Scorpio with this Pisces rising. Now, this Pisces rising was ruled by Neptune in Taurus retrograde in the second house. But now that would give him a glamorous aura, and it's in the second house of money. So this was a double-edged sword for him. He was able to amass a lot of money quickly and make money quickly through his aura effortlessly. And yet he also had a lot of money troubles and loss because Neptune here is afflicted and it's retrograde. It's opposing the node here, basically opposing Mars in Scorpio. Okay, so this is why I picked Bela. And this loose stellium in Taurus conjunction with Saturn and Pluto, very, very heavy and intense in the Taurus house, in Taurus, and then Pluto, transformation, Saturn lessons, and Neptune, which is glamour and illusion and deception. And all of his movies had this kind of like foggy, Piscean, Scorpion horror movie, dreamy intensity, right? He was attracted to it. And then the cast directors and the producers obviously saw his energy. And so he was attracted to it. And then they were attracted to him to give him these roles. But apparently he had a lot of troubles with acting in money. And part of that was because he was a soldier in World War I, sustained injuries, as many men did. And so he had physical issues going into acting. So he had this intensity, and yet he was dealing with this physical pain, and eventually got addicted to pain medication and alcoholism. This sort of afflicted Neptune, hiding in the second house, probably affected his self-esteem too. Self-esteem was sort of foggy. So just so difficult. I mean, great for movies, but to be a person in daily life, I'm being led. I'm being led to picking these famous people that are departed. These charts. I have yet to pick one that seems kind of light and easy. And so this Neptune in Taurus was his ruler. But here's his Libra. Uranus is in Virgo, which is degeneration, in the 7th house. Mercury in Scorpio retrograde, very early. And again, this is a Libra-Scorpio. So he's a Libra-Scorpio person. He's a Libra-Scorpio thinker. Very intense, but also a little bit dramatic and temperamental. Mars in Scorpio, not retrograde, which is good. That was direct and kind of in the middle of the sign, which is pretty strong. But then again, there's oppositions here. One saving grace he had, and I think this gave him a beautiful aura for acting. And you can see it when you watch him. He's almost not real to me. Mars in Scorpio trine Pisces here. Now, it's not trine Jupiter in Cancer. Jupiter's in water, but it's not trine it. It's too early. But 12 Pisces Mars, or 13 trine Mars at 11 of Scorpio. So that was one saving grace, and I think survival mechanism for him to be able to project his intense magnetic Scorpio Mars energy to the public in this Piscean way, in an effortless, in a very fluid way. No one can be more fluid than it being in water signs. If this Mars trine the ascendant was in fire, it would be more fiery, it would be more intense and direct, but it wouldn't be as more fluid, and it wouldn't have the same kind of aura. I keep coming back to this word aura. This is just what I'm seeing. This chart is just all aura and ambiance. I mean, the Mars in Scorpio ruled by Pluto and Taurus. So all this coming back to all this Taurus here, all these Taurus planets, all retrograde, all paused, kind of held back in the second house, in a fixed house, in the house of self-esteem and values, money, in a mundane sense, money. And then his 8th house here. So I didn't even mention that. So Mars and Scorpio in the 8th house. I don't know if I've ever read for anyone in my life or looked up any chart that had that. So this is a double Pluto, Scorpio, Mars. Mars in Scorpio in the Scorpio house. If that's not hidden power and hidden magnetism and aura, I don't know what is. Again, I don't know if I've ever seen that. And I would love to talk to other astrologers about that and see if anyone else has read for or has that or knows anyone in their personal life that's alive that has a Mars in Scorpio in its own house. And then he also had the node in Scorpio, so he had a nodal axis of Scorpio, Taurus. The Taurus node is not shown here, but this is where it would be. So those were his lessons and his destiny, was to transform through all this Scorpio energy through acting and through other people's resources. This also tells me with Neptune that he was swindled. Yeah, I'm getting that. He was swindled and he was not always paid what he was worth. There were people that took advantage of him, and that's how he had losses here as well. So he had strong energy to amass other people's resources or amass money through other people, through other people's opportunities, the 8th house, and then his own resources here sort of afflicted. So this seesaw here, you know, whenever you see these strong polarities in someone's chart, especially a famous person, and you see a lot of retrograde energy, there's a lot of, it's kind of hidden, it's paused, and it's kind of back and forth, back and forth. You know, my resources, other people's, my money, other people's money. So a lot of struggle there. And a lot of hidden, I think he had hidden obsessions as well. That's why he was so attracted to maybe being in the military, attracted to the pain, the drugs that may have given him, put him in a different hallucinogenic state possibly, and also the acting, which probably gave him some sort of high as well. And he was married 5 times. Now, I know this was more common back in the day for famous actors, especially potentially troubled people, getting in and out of relationships. 5 times he was married, and but only one son, and that's the son that has written bios on him. So only one son out of 5 marriages. So that's interesting. But you know, a Mars and Scorpio in the 8th house is, I don't even know how anyone could even live with someone like that. And I don't mean that in a negative way against Bella, against Bella's spirit. I don't mean that in a negative way. What I mean is there's nothing in astrology that is more focused and relentless than that. So in order for him to be so focused and relentless on whatever it was capturing his interest and goals at the moment, at any given moment in his life, everything else had to suffer somewhat. Everything else had to, you know, was a distraction for him. Now, with all this powerful energy, he had Venus in Sag, which is direct. That's a restless in love, very hard to pin down and tie down, because Sag, again, very different than all this Libra and the Scorpio, very different than this Pisces, and this Venus square, the ascendant. So with all this relentless focus, there was this very much this crazy relentless restlessness. No major Gemini since the asteroid, and just a little Virgo here. These are not aspecting the Virgo because the Virgo is too late. But he does have Virgo, Sag. This is our planet, and then the rising. But all that, and then again, just like John Lennon, an eccentric Aquarius, emotionally detached moon in Aquarius. So again, when I'm talking about some of these things, I know I'm emphasizing some kind of positive or negativity about it. It doesn't mean that it's bad. And it doesn't mean what I say about it is the absolute and it's completely right either. It just means this tendency and how I tune into it. This is how I'm explaining it. And you know, when if I could pick 10 astrologers that I like to watch on YouTube and have all of them look at this chart and go at it, and everyone's going to see the same things and they're going to see kind of the same power, but the way they intuit it, the way they explain it, and then their belief systems and their philosophies are going to be different. So it's going to come out in a different way. Some astrologers are going to be more spiritual about it. Some are going to be more logical and mathematical with the degrees and the fixed stars. But this is just amazing. I mean, here it is almost 10 o'clock, and I feel like I still haven't done this chart justice. So these kind of charts are so meaty that you can just, it's like a master class for anyone, from a beginning astrologer to an advanced astrologer or even a master. But I would love to hear, I'm going to see if I can find any astrologers talking about this chart, or even like Boris Karloff, any of the sort of iconic horror genre, old school actors. But I want to leave you with Bela Lugosi because this is really interesting. He was on the 20th, which obviously is part of this cusp. So this cusp is charisma. It is dramatic. there's still a lot of beauty there from the Libra part. And it's also has that residue of what's coming up is this last week of Libra of theater. And, I mentioned how the late Libra person can kind of act in ways in their life. They can present certain images. It doesn't mean they're faking it or being insincere, but they can kind of put on certain, hats to be more social, even if they're introverted, because Libras balance that. They have that line. Librans have that line of extroversion and introversion because they literally are the scales, and they are literally the scales of justice and balance. And there's no other sign that kind of has that, mythology to it. Great choice of a chart. Thank you. I thought so too. It just came to me this morning. I had no plan. In fact, I had no plan this whole season. He didn't come to me at all for any reason. And then I was looking up old actors and actresses and musicians and composers. And as soon as I saw his name, I was like, that's it. So maybe we'll come back to him at some point. If anyone has any questions or comments after this video is done, it's just a regular video. You can comment, you can like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe and share. Tell your family and friends to sign in. So you have to subscribe to All Are Personalized, and then click the like and the like, share, and the comment as well. But I appreciate those comments. Keep them coming. Thank you to the loyal fans. I like that you're getting badges now to recognize, and you should feel good because if I was attending your live stream and I was on there and I kept seeing that I'm #1 with engagement, I would be like, wow, I'm really getting a lot out of these live streams, so it's just great. But I'm just glad to send out these messages, and thank you for anyone that assisted tonight. We appreciate it. But this new moon coming up in Libra, it's the last Libra, the last resort for Libra, for peace and harmony. And just in your own way, you can send that out to the universe, especially to this country, but also other countries. Everybody needs it with all the weird stuff coming on, coming up in the world. So a good time for the new moon in Libra, all about peace and harmony. But thank you so much for hanging out with me late tonight on a Friday. At least it's late for me. It's almost 10. And just to mention, in case anyone watches this, there will be no live stream on Sunday the 12th, and obviously no live stream tomorrow. This is the live stream for the whole weekend. I have a very busy weekend coming up, and most likely we'll resume on, what will that be, the 19th? Sunday the 19th will be the next live stream, most likely at 8 or 8:30. So thank you so much, and stay safe this week, and we'll see you next week.